All right. Hey guys, Courtney Mermaid here with what I believe is part 4. I really hope this is part 4. It's part 3, 4, or 5. I'll let you it'll be in the title of my tail making series. In this video, we are going to be talking about the accent colors, which I will be using Lumiere paints in 3 different colors. We've got these 3 guys here. Using these are going to be for the scales on my tail, as well as for some of the detail on the side, as well as to create the shimmery water effect, like the cool, glistening kind of look that all my tails so far have had. There's a bit of doing, but it's lots of fun, so grab your tail, grab your paints, and let's get started. Okay, so when you're starting, you're going to be starting from the fluke up. It just makes the most sense to do the scales from that way to the top, especially if you're going to be changing colors. I'm not for this. I'm going to be sticking with the same color for the scales all the way up, but I just find that it's easy to do it this way. I also realize I don't have my stencil. Okay, so I'm going to have to go find my stencil. I'll be back. Okay, so that was a magical little moment that I totally just had there. Lucky for me, I'm organized and I keep my stencils all in the same place. I highly recommend you grab one of these. It's one of those plastic like file folder guys from your local dollar store for like $1. Keep all of your stencils in the same place because you never know when you're gonna need to use them again. And I'm gonna be using for this tail, I'm going to be using the same stencil that I used for this. So I'm going to be recreating this kind of a look. This was 4 different stencils, if I'm not mistaken. 2 large, 2 small. And of the large and the small, there was a variety. So you can actually see the odd scale actually has some damage done to it, where it looks a little bit. There's another one and another one here. I tried to be a bit random about how I did it, just to keep it interesting. The reason I suggest making 2 stencils is because you are going to find some areas you're not going to have as much room, because I do the scales and I go all the way around the tail, so I actually over the seam actually have scales, not an actual seam. So the seam is actually thought out, so you can see that the scales actually go right over top of the seam. I don't just end at the seam. You actually want to try and line these guys up. Because it's fabric and it's kind of hard to avoid having such an obvious seam, we try to do what we can to kind of minimize it a little bit anyway. So this is a good way to do that, by having the scales actually be part and go right over. So what I use to make my stencils, they're actually made from those old plastic file folders. You use these actually a lot in high school, college even, you know, to separate sort of information in your binders and stuff. They're cheap. You can get them for, you know, cents at the dollar store. Like, they're not super expensive. You can see these are actually ones from my very, 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 very first mermaid tail that I ever painted. Those are some of the originals. This paint does actually peel off. This stuff, when it dries, because of the kind of smooth, soft plastic that this is, it will just scratch and peel right off. So that's pretty handy. That was off of Bluefish, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty sure that was Bluefish. I keep them all, right? Because you never know. You want to have sort of your own little warehouse of extra scales to kind of see what it's all going to look like, right? It's actually pretty cool. But so here are the large ones. Those are the 2 large ones. I didn't need, honestly, I didn't use a lot. I ended up, as you can see, I used these guys. I didn't clean it because I'm not very clever. But as you can see, this stuff actually does peel like right off. So if you've used one of these before and you were like me, you didn't clean it, just make sure you give it a quick once over before you get started, just to avoid any little bits of residue getting caught in the other paint. So I'm just going to clean this off now. Here we go. Okay, so as you can see, that actually cleaned off really well. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be super, super pristine, but just to get the majority of the gunk and stuff off. That is one of the beautiful parts about these, is the reusability. So if you decide to try something different, you could have multiple different kinds of scales for different kinds of tails, and you don't have to remake them every single time. As you can see, I just literally just cut. So it takes a little bit of time to get it, you know, so even, but and then just a couple For this one, I believe I probably used like a marker and then an X-Acto. I can't remember how I did that one, but yeah. So you want something like this. This is gonna be your go-to scale making. This is how I do it. This is why it takes so long, okay? Every single one of these scales is done one at a time. Okay, so that's why they take so long to do, is because every single one of these is done one at a time with a stencil. Now you know. Okay, so no sooner do I pour the water into that cup and I find my actual cup. I like to have a designated cup just for paint, since this stuff, like, it adheres and it can be really hard to get off. Side note, if you guys are using the Lumiere paint, do not let it sit forever in your brush. As soon as it starts to dry, it is going to become very difficult to get out of your brushes, and you're going to have to actually go and buy the heavy duty, like, brush cleaning stuff from Opus to get it out. So yeah, this was one that didn't get cleaned very well, but I did catch it in time before it got too damaged. The thing is it will gunk up your brush and you'll no longer have that nice soft edge, which is what you need to get that faded look with the scales and with anything that you do on the tail. So we're gonna start at the base. Like I said, I'm gonna be adding the blue to the fin now. I'll let you guys watch me do that. I'm also going to show you the technique for adding just the sparkle, which is really fun to do. I really like doing that. We'll see if we get to scales in this video. That might be another part. I don't know yet. But like I said, these take me a really long time to do, so I'm just kind of winging it, playing it by ear to see how many parts this is going to be. All right, let's get painting. All right, so hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm just gonna quickly run and grab my tail for reference. I've got my goldfish tail in the chair over here. I'm just gonna go run and grab Miranda. Okay, so make sure you have your reference material handy, or whatever it is you're going off of for reference. I'm just gonna check to make sure that oh, this one's already open. Okay, so I'm gonna use that one, unless this one's further down. Nope, that's new too. Somehow I ended up with so many of these. I don't really know how or why or what, but I've got freaking 1,000 of them. Woo. All right, people, let's do this. Okay. Oh. I forgot how much I love this stuff. Okay, so for this, you want a really dry brush, and you do not want a lot, okay? This is just for the shimmer. This stuff will peel off if you put too much on, okay? Trust me, I've learned from experience that it will happen. So even it won't stick to the glue. If you had too much glue oozing out the sides, you're gonna run into a little bit of an issue. But you just want to put enough on here because you can see it's slightly changing the color and the look of this stuff. This stuff will get cut afterwards to get a little bit more of a look. And don't worry if you go a little bit up on top of here. This whole section is actually going to get faded up into that next. So yeah, don't sweat it. Just kind of work it in. You don't want big areas where it's just gobbed on. Okay, now comes the part where you're going to need a little bit of paint, and then you're going to start using the water to kind of blend it out. But let's just start with the really dry. I'm going to just start bringing it up like this, and do it small. You want to, like, take advantage of the fact that the brush is dry right now, and it kind of just pulls the paint and the sparkle. You can't really see. I'm sorry that it's a little bit hard to see with the camera and the lights and everything here. see that a little bit. Where that shine's kind of slowly starting to come out. You don't want to direct like a super harsh line because this is already giving you a bit of a line, so you kind of want to fake. You kind of want to fake it a little bit. You can do a couple this way too, because you're going to want to bring, the lines are going to kind of come up into all of this. The reason I dab into this is to kind of just get a little bit into the brush, kind of just work it in a little bit. You don't want to have a super huge amount of paint on your brush when you're doing this. Okay, so here comes an important step. I've worked this up a little bit more into the thing. You're gonna grab a little bit of paint here, okay? Right? You don't have to use the cap. You can use a plate or you can use whatever you want to use. Now you're gonna load up with just a little bit of water, not a lot, okay? Don't drown your brush. You're gonna go here and you're just gonna, just like the tip, just like a little bit, just boop. And you're gonna kind of put it in here. What you're going for is a little bit of a looser consistency. When you start to see the sparkles and the brush starts to get filled with the paint, a little bit like, I just squirted it everywhere. Okay, when the brush starts to load up with the, like, suck the paint up a little bit, that's when you know you're getting close to the right consistency, okay? You're gonna grab this now, and you're gonna kind of, you'll see that it reacts to the fabric a little bit differently. It's gonna soak in a little bit more. Now for this one, you wanna start getting some of those lines to kind of give the illusion that there's some texture in here. Your brush, like, hopefully you got a decent brush. Your brush is gonna help do that with the splits that's in it. So you're gonna go like, just grab a little bit here, pull a little bit up, and the texture of the brush is gonna help sell this illusion here. All right, so that's what's next. So then a little bit more water, a little bit more in here. Things are gonna start to get a little bit wet on your workstation, but that's kind of part of the fun of it. And only kind of, if you did a gradient, similar to what I did, kind of go midway up that gradient, because we're actually going to be using a second color, and that second color is going to come down to kind of meet this color. I used this technique on Goldfish, but whatever, the yellow and the gold just mix so well together that it's kind of hard to see. But what you should hopefully be seeing now, it's a little bit, it doesn't show up, there you go, quite as well as I'd like under this lighting, but you can see a little bit of the, like, thin, tight texture. We're trying to get some texture in there, trying to make this feel as though if you were going to touch it, there might be some ridges, you know? Because we're using paint, we have to cheat a little bit. We're not using silicone, we're not able to just sculpt and add in texture. We have to paint it in, which is, it's more challenging, I think, but that's not knocking silicone at all. Silicone's way beyond my scope of comprehension. I'm just saying that it's a different kind of challenge. So you have to kind of work with the tools that you have. And I'm gonna move over here to try and get the same effect. And I'm using the brush not on its flat, but on its side to get these good lines here. Boy, I wish you guys could see what I'm saying, because, oh my goodness. And again, if you're ever not sure, just grab some of your scrap and just practice to see how it's turning out, you know? It doesn't need to be perfect. And then if you feel like you've gotten a little bit too much in there, you can grab some more water a little bit here. It's not really possible to overdo it depending on what you're, you know, what the look is you're going for. I'm using diluted paint, so that's kind of helping to not give it, so like if you did this with a really dark paint, it might be a little bit overpowering, so good. Oh my goodness, wow, this is probably the nicest one I've done. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. I'm going to add another little bit more of this here. For this second set though, so I've added a little bit of paint here, A little bit of water here, kind of mix it in a little bit. Your initial pass, you do want to have it a dry brush. Just trust me, it might seem a little bit redundant, but I've done this enough times to know that it doesn't work if you skip a step. So just trust me. Just believe that I've done this enough times now. And if you happen to get too much water on there, which I just did, grab yourself a paper towel and just gently dab. Don't press too hard because you risk lifting up some of the paint that's already down. Just a little dab will fix that up. And if you have a bird, your bird is going to scream at you. So what I'm doing here is I'm just filling in some of the gaps because the material that I use for the plastic has a little bit of texture in it. It does make things a little bit challenging for me. And you may in fact run into your own unique challenges depending on what material you decided to use or was available to you at the time. Remembering, of course, that if you are a patron of mine on Patreon, I am more than happy to help with more personalized instruction and greater detail for anybody interested. That's available to all my patrons. Okay, so that looks fantastic, if I dare say so myself. It's a little bit hard to see. I'll switch the camera around. Hopefully it shows up. Remember, of course, if you did use your cap, remember to clean it out as best as you can. Otherwise, it will seal completely shut. I learned that the hard way. To the container. So it's a little bit harder to see. There you go, actually, it's not too bad. See some sparkly, some shimmers. Woohoo. Okay, and now we're gonna do, now we're gonna do something similar, but working our way down and a little bit up into this. So now we bust open this guy, who is the right guy. Phew. Give it a good shake. He's been sitting for a while. He was the last one in the store. So. Oh man. Couldn't you just lick that right off? Doesn't that look so good? Oh my goodness. Okay. Just gonna leave that there. Remember to rinse out your brushes. Here we go. Okay, and since I actually am going to be using this a bit wet, I don't need to have a dry brush, so I'm okay to continue using the brush that I just washed. So I'm just going to grab this guy. I'm taking some of the paint off of the little lid. Dipped it in a little bit of water, and now I'm just going to mix it in here a little bit. Going to add a little bit more water. For this one, I'm really going to try and draw the sparkles out of it, so this is going to take a little bit of doing. And I'm going to just test it on a small area here. It's still too much. I am debating, I'm getting a lot of silver coming through with that, so just give me 1 second. It's pretty easy to kind of erase if you've made a little bit of a boo-boo. I'm gonna try some of the green, see if that gives me a better reaction. I don't know, but it's going to, but let's see. Oh my gosh, this stuff's amazing. And that gives gold sparkles. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, this is why we always guess and test on the side. Close that guy up. close this guy up in a second. We are actually going to use, we're going to continue to use the really light blue. See, I did actually use the gold though, but I used it in such a small amount. Okay. Another change of plans. We are going to go with this green, but I'm going to do it so little. It's going to be crazy. This is quite a stressful thing to do. Not kidding. There we go. That's better. Don't worry too much about going over top of the blue because scales. Okay, so what I'm doing here is sparkles. That's what's happening. That's what's happening here. We are getting into some sparkle territory now. These are not going to go all the way up the tail yet. Scales will come next, but this is part of the whole process. So I get a little bit more like sparkly action happening here first before I put on the scales. But yeah, this side is essentially almost done. I want to get a little bit more something here, but I'm not quite sure how I want to achieve that yet. So this is part of the fun of it. This sort of guessing and testing and hoping for the best is all part of the fun of it. There it is. Okay. Just getting a little bit more sparkle. Because the fluke doesn't get scales like the rest of it does, we have to kind of be a little bit creative and try and get a little bit. It's all about texture, really. That's what it all kind of comes down to in the end, is how to get a nice amount of texture using paint. So it takes some doing. I'm also trying to match my old tail, so that makes it a bit more of a challenge. You know, if you're working off of a design. I also sell tail designs as well. I'll include the link in the description below. I've started a DeviantArt page where I'm posting tail designs for sale that you can use, no strings attached. You can use them to make your own tail. There are a few small rules, but they're mostly just please do not try and resell it for more than what you paid for it, that kind of thing. But you know, if you're struggling a little bit for a design idea, it could be a good thing, because I include a high-res copy of the file, so you can get up close and personal with what I've got going on there. Worth checking out. I am also considering taking design requests, like commissions, if you want me to design you a tail, not necessarily to make you the tail, but to just design the tail for you. If there's a lot of interest in that, that might be something that I decide to offer in the future as well. So that is feeling pretty good. My fabric is now pretty waterlogged, so I'm actually going to stop this for now. This is actually going to be a good place to stop this video. Hold that thought. Here we go. I can handle this. So this is actually going to be a good place to stop the video for today. You're going to want to do this to both sides of your tail. So now that I'm going to stop this video, I'm going to let this sucker dry. Then I'm going to flip it over, do the back. Anything that you do while you're painting, you kind of want to do one side, then do the other side as soon as possible. You don't really want to wait. You know, because sometimes you will have learned something new, and then if you don't do it right away again, you'll forget how you did it, and then the two sides won't look really similar. It's kind of like if you ever draw eyeballs. you do the basic structure first and you build them up together, because if you fully render one eyeball, the other eyeball just doesn't look the same. I don't know. Pro tip. Yeah, but I'll give you a quick sneak peek at what this looks like now. So sadly, the lighting in here isn't... I'm going to just kind of move back and forth so you can see the twinkling a little bit. You see there's a little bit of twinkle? Okay. So that's where we're going to leave it off. It looks a little bit warped and a little bit wet because, well, it is a little bit warped and it is a little bit wet. This is going to dry. Sequins are going to be all up here. This is going to be scales, more sequins. Between this video and the next video, I will also, after I've completed both sides of this, I'm going to be taking my darker color and actually going down, blending up here, and then doing a nice one more pass over top of this, just because I want to thicken it up a little bit. Also, this paint, it does hold up to the wear and tear that the fluke receives on a sort of a daily kind of mermaid grind, as it were, when you're in the pool, brushing up against the floor, whatever. So I like to kind of frame the tail with this stuff, the Lumiere. So that's just that tip there. This is where we're at so far. Remember, do not gob the paint on here. This is already dry. I can already touch this because I did not put a whole lot on it. Okay, you only do the one side, you do not do both sides. Okay guys, so if you made it all the way to the end, woo, go team! This is so much fun. I really hope I get to start seeing some of you guys and what you're working on soon. Remember to tweet me, Courtney Mermaid, on Twitter. I would love to see your tail creations so far. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked what I had to say and show. Don't forget to subscribe so you can catch the next part of this epic tail making series. Guys, it's getting crazy. There's still so much more to do. We've got scales to cover, and then all of the lovely little accents and some of the cool things that I do to give the tail even more life and whoa. Texture, there we go. I'm having a problem, you guys. I blame the bird who's over there twittering, okay? It's terrible. Yeah, so I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Happy tail making, happy swimming, and I will talk to you guys soon, okay? Bye.